The following Conscious Consumer Network recording of a live broadcast is available to purchase in high definition at ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a CCN pledger. For €10 a month, you can have unlimited access to CCN high definition downloads at ethymarket.com. Ethymarket, the ethical marketplace for conscious consumers.
Welcome to the 5th episode of Interactive U TV. I'm Dr. Carmen Boulter, and my guest today is Laurie Simons, who has quite a pedigree and interesting career, and she's going to be talking to us about the work she's been doing. Laurie is in New York at the moment, and she has worked with Interactive U for a while, and I'd just like to welcome you, Laurie. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hi, it's my pleasure. I'm quite delighted, actually.
So why don't you start with your involvement with Interactive U?
Well, I think I have to start with my involvement, first of all, in knowing you, which goes back many, many decades, actually. I think we met probably back in the 70s. I don't want to age us, so I won't say how far back. But we met a very long time ago and maintained our friendship throughout many distances. And in fact, I don't think we've actually seen each other in person for several years now, have we? But
well, I see you online almost every day.
I see you every day.
Like we're not in touch.
I know, exactly. We've been almost every day for 2 or 3 years now. We've been working on Interactive U. So when I heard about your dream to start the Interactive University, I was very intrigued because at the time when I first heard about it, it was a dream. It wasn't formulated yet, and so it was very delightful for me to be able to work with you using various platforms. We started with Joomla and then we went to Moodle to bring the dream to life. So that's been very, very much a pleasure for me.
Yeah. Content management systems. And to me, we met at the University of Alberta when we were both in the Department of Educational Psychology, learning to be psychologists. Mm-hmm. And so that takes us a way back. And so we're psychologists at heart, I always say. But since then, we've both become filmmakers in our own right, which is fascinating to me as well. Because when you first started doing film, I went, what does that have to do with psychology?
Isn't it funny that we both ended up there?
It is, but I also think that people are so video oriented right now that it's kind of the way of the future. Mm-hmm. And the other claim to fame is that your sons, Jeff and Jay Sterenberg, are the star editors for the Pyramid Code. And
that's right.
There is absolutely no way the Pyramid Code would have been as successful or as well paced if it hadn't been for them. They really understood how shorter is better. So I'm pretty proud of that too, because it just keeps the family somehow, doesn't it?
Well, and there's kind of a story to that too that kind of got me into filmmaking, because when the kids were young, I actually, and even before they were born, I made 3 films over a period of 20 years, hired camera people and sat next to editors because I just really had something I wanted to share on some different topics. And so when my oldest son was 16 years old, he saved up his money to buy a car, like most 16-year-olds do, and decided instead of buying a car, he was going to buy a video camera. And so that was interesting. He just hitched rides with his friends, but he really wanted to make films. And when he got the camera, I started to get excited because that's what I always wanted to do. So it was around that time, probably 1999. That he started a class in high school. His last 2 years of high school, he took a class in video production, and he came home and told me all about these new programs that you could use on your computer to edit. Prior to that, video editing had been tape deck to tape deck, and it was very difficult to get a precise cut at the end of someone's sentence in the films that I had previously made. So when he talked about getting this program, and in fact, it was Adobe Premiere at the time. So we invested in the computer system, and he started his editing at home and taught me how to do it. And so that's kind of where I got involved in filmmaking, initially as a hobby. then when he went off to college, I put myself in college, and that's hence my filmmaking career kind of evolved. All the while I was, and still continue to be, doing counseling.
Right, but you were working collaboratively with Jay, and then when he went off to college, you were kind of left on your own, so you went to film school. Is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. I don't know about collaboratively. I was doing my own projects, and he was my technical consultant. He was right there, so if anything, if I had any questions, I'd just say, "Hey, Jay, come and help me." So, and when he went to college and he wasn't there, I just was lost. I didn't produce any films. I just stopped. I just didn't know what to do. That's when I decided, I need to take myself to school. So I went to, it was called Advanced Track TV and Video Production at Bellevue College, and jumped right into television production right off the bat. And that was 2002, I think, for a couple of years.
To me, this is a really good example of what was true in matriarchal cultures, was that the children respected the elders for their wisdom and their experience, but the parents were looking to the kids for being more innovative and moving forward. And I think in the traditional school system, the teacher wants to be at the front, the sage on the stage, and the students are supposed to be lesser than. And it really isn't like that. I mean, most parents and grandparents rely on their kids and grandkids to help them with technology. And that's really fascinating, because I think that's switching things up in terms of respecting the younger generation. And they sure take to it like ducks to water. They're so good at it.
And so he went on to develop a successful career in New York City, in Brooklyn, in New York, doing film editing and video production. And
as have both your sons.
And his brother too. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you started Parent Television Network, which was, I was completely fascinated with that, because to me, the blending of skills and working within different domains and collaborating and being creative is the answer. And so whatever worked or didn't work with that, I thought it was just brilliant. Can you tell us a little bit about the conditions that led you to start that?
That would have been during that time that I was going to college, which was 2002, 2004. And I just really wanted to make films that along the lines of parenting. That was my career. That was something I was very interested in. And I had this idea of creating half-hour type TV shows, not that tell people how to parent, but that just show different kinds of scenarios, different stories. And I wanted it to be international. I wanted to bring in other countries and help people raise kids from other countries. And so I worked on a few programs myself and looked for other people that were making programs. And at the time, internet TV was not quite the thing that it is now. And so I was trying to work out kind of a hybrid of broadcast TV and internet TV, and struggled a little bit with how that model might work. I, realized that I was trying to wear two hats at the same time. I was trying to start the network, as it were, and produce the films kind of all at the same time, and find other filmmakers. In retrospect, it sounds like a great idea, but I just wasn't quite able to pull it off in a way that was financially feasible for me. I was, I needed to make a living, and that wasn't really going to be doing it. So I actually gave it away to someone else who took it a little bit farther. And I don't know exactly if anything's happened to it since then. I think it might have either changed its name or closed down, kind of lost touch.
Well, it was your baby for a long time, and I was fascinated to watch you go through it. And no matter what, with these kinds of situations, we learn a lot, and we have to make it viable somehow. And that's the challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
That is enlivening our passion, that is constructivist, that's creative, that has output, that's useful to people, but isn't telling people what to think. And so the thing that impressed me most about Parent Television Network was you said it wasn't prescriptive.
Right.
It wasn't telling people what to do to raise their kids, but it became obvious. If the child is having a temper tantrum, whatever you did didn't work. And if everybody's getting along happily, whatever you did work. And so I thought that was brilliant. And I hope that, I see that you've continued to build on what you already know. And that's the other principle in interactive view. In constructivism, you find it's meaning centered. So that's what you just said. Like, you're already into counseling, you were into systemic family therapy with your husband, who's trained in that as well. And so that's meaning centered. It's building on what you already know. It's addressing the gaps in your learning, which is what going back to university college did for you. And the thing is that I've watched you over these years, tackle things that were brand new, and always coming back to a collaborative, socially based, community oriented, creative output, right? So that's what's useful, and I think that's what a lot of people don't experience, because the school system basically says, do one thing, one subject, go deep in one department or domain, and not continue to recombine things. So you've gone on to do a number of different projects. And it's similar to me. They seem like they're scattered all over the place, but when you come back down to the middle of it, it's about who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always been.
Yeah, you're following your interests.
So many different subjects. And that was actually one of the reasons why filmmaking was of such great interest to me. Because when you're making films, you can do films on a large variety of topics. And you can dive right in, you can get to know people, you can get into the subject, you can finish it up and continue to meet more people who are into that subject, and then switch to a completely different subject. Or so it seems.
But the thing now, and we didn't have this before either, we didn't even have YouTube in the early days. Everybody's just hungry for film. But the thing is what we're being shown on Hollywood, on TV, all of that seems to be an old system with old values, more disconnect rather than connect, looking at power over instead of empowerment and all of that. So I think a lot of people are not watching TV anymore, because the value system doesn't really support what we're talking about, which is collaboration and things that empower humanity rather than disempower. And so, so we're in a really good place, and we're also looking at training people to make videos, and that's also part of interactive view. So, I mean, you can have all the skills and the techniques, but you still have to have a topic and a way of presenting.
Exactly. And creating models, I think, is the thing that interactive view is all about, modeling.
Yes.
You mentioned that a lot, and that's really true.
Well, I say that you can talk, but if you say, and also people can go get a degree in website building, or get a certificate for it. But when it comes down to it, as an instructor, as an employer, would you rather see a website that somebody built, or see the certificate that they completed the courses and passed the tests? I want to see, that what they've built. But the other thing in this beautiful world of internet, if you knew all the facts and all the techniques, and you were completely up to date, and you had complete knowledge right now, by tomorrow, there's new things to learn. And really, this is about being adaptable. This is about being able to have transferable skills. But the thing that's the most powerful is seeing someone else do it. And so it's incredibly motivating. And so maybe you can take us through some of your projects that you've done. The first big film you did.
Yeah, that was the first big one. I did a number of small ones, especially in those first 2 years, way back in the early 2000s. And even did some traveling. I made a film about the women of Transylvania in 2003 and 4. And actually in 2000, I did a film called Our Faces, which was about growing up gay, lesbian, transgender, or bisexual. And in 2000, believe it or not, that topic was very touchy topic. And that film actually ended up being used in the University of Washington School of Social Work for many years as a part of their social work training. And so I joke sometimes saying, that maybe that film single-handedly led to the law of the land in the United States now being changed so that everyone has marriage equality, which just happened. That took 15 years. But I joke about that. But there was a lot of things that went into those kind of changes.
Okay, so go ahead.
So, and so I just wanted to mention there were a number of short sometimes TV films, and sometimes just short films that I made. And then in 2009, which was when there was talk about changing the healthcare system in the United States, which is where I now live, although I'm from Canada, we had, I think my husband Terry and I were at a Thanksgiving dinner party one night, and he was kind of jokingly saying, you know, all this talk about healthcare, we should have somebody make a film about the Canadian healthcare system for an American audience, because they just really don't seem to understand what's going on in Canada. And our friend said, why don't you make that film? And it wasn't a topic that I would have at that time chosen to make. It seemed a little bit daunting. And so we thought, well, what if we did make that film? And so that is the film that we made.
And that really has changed a lot of people's perspective. And there's been a lot of propaganda that the Canadian healthcare system doesn't work, and that, you know, people have to wait for treatment, and it's socialist and all of that.
Yep.
But basically, the long and short of it is we don't worry at all about healthcare making us go broke or not being able to afford to take, you know. And the other thing that I think is that we literally are taking care of each other in Canada, because we are paying for each other's healthcare. It's just all within the bigger system. And so, you know, I think that lends itself to living in a community or a nation where we feel like we're taking care of each other, because we are taking care of each other.
I know. And the thing that was really troubling to Terry and I, and Terry's American and lived in Canada for 10 years, but what was really troubling to us was what we heard people saying. You just mentioned several of the things we heard people saying about Canada. And, you know, they seem to really understand that the Canadian system was all messed up. And yet everything they said didn't make any sense to us. We're like, what system are they talking about? And finally, when we made the film, we actually realized that there's actually been a very deliberate campaign to dissuade Americans from wanting a system like what Canada has. And it's been quite deliberate. And that was surprising to us. And not only is it deliberate, it goes back a century. And in particular to about 1948, when a PR campaign was waged, the words of which we were hearing in 2009, almost word for word, that from this campaign in 1948 and 1949, saying, you know, you don't want socialized medicine, and you know, this is going to be a terrible thing. We don't want doctors being regimented by the government, things like that, that they've been taught in the United States to be afraid of.
But that shows the power of propaganda and repetition and shaping how the public thinks things. And then, you know, like people will argue with you that our system doesn't work. Well, we're all perfectly happy with it.
That's right.
You know, and then when I hear some of the horror stories about what people go through in the States, it's just frightening.
Yeah.
And people are worried about it. And that's the thing, that it adds to everybody's stress. So it was Tommy Douglas who designed our healthcare system. Can you tell us a little bit about him and how he's related to Kiefer Sutherland, narrating your movie?
And there's a story behind that too. Well, back in 1950, 1955, the healthcare system, believe it or not, people often don't believe this, but in Canada and the United States, the healthcare systems were pretty identical. And in fact, in the first early 1950s, when I was just a little girl, my parents traveled back and forth between Canada and the United States. And I had quite a few medical problems when I was a child. And they tell me that the systems were exactly the same. And what that meant was that families would pay a quarterly fee into the doctor's plan. The doctors would get together and they'd make a plan, and people would pay this quarterly fee. And then if you paid into this quarterly fee, you'd go to the doctor and everything was covered. And then they had a hospital plan that was the same. And so these plans kind of belonged to the doctors and the hospitals. They were nonprofit plans. They worked pretty well, except for people who couldn't afford it. And Tommy Douglas was in Saskatchewan at the time. He was a politician. And his view was that you can't start leaving people out. You can't, pick who gets help and who doesn't get help, and have one person die of appendicitis and another one who can afford it get the treatment they need. And so he took it upon himself to create a plan in the province of Saskatchewan that covered every person in Saskatchewan for all of their, they already had all their hospital bills covered. He just wanted to bring in now that they would have all their doctor's bills covered. That was about 1961, 62. And so he did a campaign on behalf of that. It was voted in by the people of Saskatchewan in 1961, and in 1962, it was scheduled to be implemented. Well, the doctors had been getting messages coming up from the United States about how you don't want this. This is socialized medicine, et cetera, et cetera. And so they were objecting to it. They were really worried. They went on strike. People didn't have doctors. And the community pulled together actually in Saskatchewan, and they created what they call community clinics. And they brought in doctors from the United Kingdom and other places where their license was accepted in Saskatchewan, their medical license. And the people themselves arranged to have their own medical care looked after by doing this. And then, of course, the strike finally ended. They brought in Lord Taylor from England, who had started the England medical system. And he met with the doctors, and he met with the government, and he, got them kind of to agree to go ahead and have a truce. And then eventually they discovered when they implemented this, the government paying for everybody's hospital and doctors' fees, that actually the hospitals and doctors were now getting paid. It was very, very simple. They got paid for everybody. They didn't have all these people who couldn't afford it. They had to extend them credit and stuff like that. They just got paid for everybody. And so it actually worked out way better than they thought. And by 1970, the Canadian federal government thought it would be a good idea to have it go across Canada. And one by one, all the provinces adopted it.
Okay, so let's go and look at the trailer. We're all set up to look at it. And so CCN, ready for the healthcare movie trailer, please.
We're very privileged in Canada.
Our healthcare system is great.
If it wasn't for Canada, I'd be dead man.
I had surgery on my shoulder. I was on a waiting list for about 1.5 years.
My husband did have to wait for 13 months to do a knee replacement.
I had to wait 7 months for an MRI.
It's the point where I'm spending $700 or $800 a month out of pocket.
What do you know about Canadian healthcare?
Very little.
We have a shared history of the development of our healthcare services. In both countries up until about 1950, we had pretty much the same system.
How does your healthcare system work for you?
Lousy.
And how do you feel about your healthcare system?
I think it's wonderful.
I can't say enough good things about it. I just thank God every day that I am a Canadian citizen.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm very lucky.
We are blessed.
Every time that I've absolutely needed healthcare.
Because of us.
We've had excellent experiences in healthcare.
Canada, I'd be dead man.
I'm very pleased.
I would choose the Canadian system.
I really like the healthcare system.
All in all, it's pretty good.
I have nothing but praise. How has the Canadian healthcare system treated you?
Well, we're still alive. I think it's the result that counts.
Madam Speaker, this is not the President's house. This is not the Democrats' house. This is the people's house, and the American people don't want a government takeover of health care.
If the system is so bad and we're all so strongly supportive of it, you must think we're really stupid.
The real healthcare crisis is in public confidence and understanding, not in financial sustainability.
So here we are again, and thanks very much for letting us see that trailer, Laurie. And so let's take it to the next step. I think you've got some medical bills you want to show us.
Well, I just kind of wanted to explain some of the shock that occurred for me when I moved to the United States and had such a different experience of the healthcare system. Because in Canada, we had gone through having 2 kids born there. We'd gone through all kinds of the things that you go through when you're a live person. Sometimes you get sick, sometimes you hurt your foot, sometimes you need something medical. And I had never in the same, I call it a thought bubble. I had never, imagine this thought bubble, had in the same thought bubble medical care and money. It just never crossed my mind. And then coming down to the United States, it was chronic, constant, we call it a jackhammer in the back of your mind, like, oh my gosh, what if something happens? It's going to cost, it's going to wipe out our savings. And even with insurance in the United States, there's over 1 million people a year that declare bankruptcy because of medical bills.
1 million?
1 million a year.
What?
Yeah. And that's been going on year after year, because what happens is you get things that the insurance companies won't cover. Now, one of the things that happened recently, as everybody may know, and I don't know, there's probably people from various countries watching this show, but the United States passed the Affordable Care Act in 2010. And there's some good things that happened because of that, which had to do with the rules that were regulating some of the most horrible practices of the insurance companies. For example, if you get your insurance usually through your job. And if you switch jobs, you get new insurance in your new job. And the new insurance companies wouldn't cover any condition that you had previously. So if you had asthma and you were insured before for it, your new insurance wouldn't cover it because they called it a pre-existing condition. So if anything came up that had to do with your heart condition or your diabetes or your asthma or some back injury that you had in the past, your new insurance wouldn't cover it. And so you were on your own to pay for anything like that. Or they would put a cap on how much they would cover and you'd have to pay the rest. So there were certain things like that the Affordable Care Act put a stop to by regulating the insurance companies. And one of the other things they did was what was happening before was young people would grow up, they'd get to be 18, they'd leave home, go to college, and they would no longer be covered under their parents' plan. And so they were on their own. And so the young people didn't really have a lot of recourse except to pay for medical bills. And of course, their parents would end up paying for them. And so with the Affordable Care Act, you were now able to keep your kids on your plan until they're 27 years old. And so on your insurance plan. Anyway, so these are some good things that have happened. But the problem is that the insurance companies are now the middlemen, if it were, between everyone and their health care. You have to have insurance. It's the law that you have insurance. The insurance companies raise their rates every year and they lower what they cover. And then they expect you to cover more and more additional costs. They call it deductibles, co-pays, co-insurance, all these words that Canadians haven't ever heard of that are ways that they charge you. So for example, these are some medical bills that I just got. I don't know if you can see this one. The balance here, where is it? Oh, that one is can you see it? $363.
Yep, just hold it still and the camera will catch up. Yep. $363.21, yes.
Okay, so that's a bill. Let's see. That's a bill for the Salem Hospital. Oh, it's part of a bill for a test that I had, a CAT scan, to see if I had anything wrong, which I don't. But that was only part of the bill. This is the other bill that I got. You can see the total balance there.
Yes. Goodness.
That was for a CAT scan. It took them 3 minutes to do the CAT scan. Now, the interesting thing is that my insurance, I have to pay a whole bunch of money before my insurance will even begin to kick in. This is another bill that I got from just going to see a nurse practitioner, just for some general health, blood work, just to see if I was healthy. And so these are all bills that I have to pay because my insurance will only help me after I've paid a certain amount to begin with. And then they'll pay a percentage up until I pay a certain amount. And then they'll cover me for the rest of the year. And I better get sick now before December, because in January it starts all over again. So if I'm going to get sick, this is the time to do it.
Well, and that's just that in its statement in itself. I better hurry up and get sick is healthy.
Yeah, right.
But the thing is, it's completely unpredictable. And that's like utility bills going up, and you get used to paying a certain amount. And that's what's debilitating as income goes down. It's just incredibly stressful. And stress is what causes illness as well.
Exactly. And I'm paying for my premiums every month, for my insurance every month. I'm paying for them, and then they don't help me until I pay more. And then they help me a little bit. So
Right. And they've got everybody brainwashed into thinking it's better, which is why I've affectionately started calling it Obamacare.
Well, and it's, you know, it's the fact that we're going through insurance companies that's the issue. Now, most industrialized nations have a plan that's, you know, it's much more predictable if it's not totally tax-based, you know, where you pay your taxes and you're covered. Some countries do have plans that you pay into, but that's the end of that. You don't get more bills after that. It's, you know, you kind of have an idea of what it is that it's going to be costing you. Mm-hmm. And you don't get these big surprises, and you don't live in terror that some horrible accident is going to take you, you know, wipe out any savings that you've meagerly scraped together. Right. So when we made the healthcare movie, we covered what that movie covers is the history of what happened in Canada and what happened in the United States and how they came to be so different. And you know, now we're where we're at, and it's there's a lot of activists in the United States that are trying to change things, but it's not an easy thing to do because a lot of people think, well, let's see how the Affordable Care Act, or otherwise known as Obamacare, works. Well,
or they'll iron it out, but their website never worked, and you know, there's been tons of problems with it. There's been a lot. And now, you've traveled the country doing screenings and talking to people, and you've done trips where you go from city to city. What's the overall feeling with the people you're talking to?
A lot of people, it's amazing to me that they still carry on. There's people that have been trying to get what they call universal, single payer, publicly funded healthcare in the United States. They've been working on it for 45 years, 40 years, 30 years. And it's amazing to me that they just keep on going. It just seems so, it seems unbelievable. You know, people who know that there's an alternative can't understand why the rest of the population is so kind of, I don't know, unmotivated to change. Maybe they don't think it can change, or maybe they think, well, I'm okay. You know, my insurance is pretty good. I won't get sick. I don't know what people are thinking. But one of the things that's troubling is, just came up in the news in the last couple of weeks, that the insurance companies in the United States are now consolidating themselves. And what it looks like is going to happen is there's going to be 3 big insurance companies covering everybody in the United States. So because they keep buying each other out, buying each other out, buying each other out. And I think Anthem bought, was it Humana or Cigna? Anyway, the companies are buying each other out, and companies that, you know, people have known the names of are now being eaten up by others. And pretty soon they'll have this huge monopoly of owning all the healthcare insurance that people are required to buy.
Well, that's like all the mom and pop stores being taken over by the big box stores.
Yeah.
The thing too, though, is that the attitude of an insurance company is, we take your money, but when it's time for us to pay out, we hire people to say no.
Yeah, it's really true.
That's across. That really is true. That's across the board, and it's a game. But it really, it's to me, it's a type of abuse.
Well, and the profits that are being made off of the sick people, or the people who are trying to avoid the being sick, are in the billions of dollars that these health insurance companies are making in profit from the premiums that are paid by people who are afraid that if they get sick, you know, they won't be able to afford it.
But they don't pay for preventative care. I lived in Chinese culture in Taiwan for 4 years. And what's true there is, if somebody dies on the operating table, the doctor doesn't get paid. If somebody doesn't get better from the care that the doctor's offered, the doctor doesn't get paid. But they will pay for massage and for, you know, preventative anything.
Right. And they do say they pay for preventive care, and this is one of the other laws that was put in place that the insurance companies are actually complaining about, because now they have to pay more, but they have to pay for mammograms and, you know, the kind of preventive tests that have been proven to be preventive. But if you go to the doctor with a complaint of some kind, and you say to the doctor, could you look at, you know, my arm or whatever, and the doctor looks at your arm, when they send in the bill, that's not preventive care, that's treatment. or diagnosis. And so you end up having to pay that doctor's appointment because it's not preventive. It's very narrowly defined as to what they consider to be preventive.
All in favor of the big corporations and the big companies. Now, this attitude, though, goes through culture. And I think that people, we've talked about it a lot, people end up with systemic distress. It's just, you just can't cope anymore. And actually, in our work meetings, a couple of times you had to go on hold to arrange for your health care. I know you're real concerned about it. And there were times where you couldn't get your insurance going. And then you were calculating how many people you talked to, how many calls.
For hours, 14, 15 hours. And I was uninsured for 2 months because of various glitches. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're not a person that would go without insurance without, you try. I watched you try. Yeah. Anyway, so we understand that it's a problem.
And I just want to make one point. So the insurance companies don't come out as the total bad guys here, because first of all, their purpose is to make a profit. They're a company, and it's the system that's at fault for having healthcare be a for-profit business. But the other thing that's happening is the doctors and the hospitals are raising their fees and billing you for every little Band-Aid, and they're inflating all of the costs way beyond costs anywhere else in any other country. And then the insurance companies play this little game of trying to bargain them down. So if the insurance company is paying for your hernia operation, let's say, they'll say, no, we'll only pay $12,000 for that hernia operation, even though you're billing $27,000. And the hospital will bill $27,000, $30,000, $50,000. And if you don't have insurance, you pay the whole thing. If you have insurance, at least they bargain it down. So it's this really interesting game that they play, raising the prices, bargaining it down, and so the insurance companies can write off a lot of the charges.
So now they've got medical tourism, where it's cheaper to fly to Thailand to have an operation and stay at a spa with your feet in the sugar white sand on the beach while you recover than it is to stay home. And then they demonize all of that. Oh, well, if you're in another country, it's not going to be the kind of care we're giving. And that's not turning out to be true. It really isn't. But I think that there's a lot of similarities in this whole thing that are, going through utilities, going through the way that, the housing market, student loans, all these different things that are really about breaking the backs of the common people.
Mm-hmm. For profit
with unexpected expenses. And it's just not right.
And that's why,
sorry.
I just wanted to go back to Tommy Douglas and one of our favorite quotes, which is kind of on our website. He said, people are more important than profits. And that was his mantra.
Right. And
that's not what's happening.
That the system would be based on that instead of the 1%. Now, with all the concerted effort that you've put in, all of the traveling, face-to-face screenings, this community, that community, the proof is in the pudding. Do you feel like you've been effective?
When there's a national conference and somebody says, how many of you are using the healthcare movie in your advocacy? 75% of the hands go up. And so we feel very amazingly validated that there's some value people are finding when they realize the truth of the history of how the Canadian system developed and how the Canadian people really like it. And certainly it's not perfect, but it's certainly a far cry better for the general person to not have to be worried about finances all the time.
We don't worry about it. Now, maybe the system isn't perfect, pharmaceuticals, all of that.
Yeah.
But we don't lie awake at night wondering what's going to happen if.
Yeah. And like these bills that I've got for, honestly, I had some tests done to see if I'm healthy, and I am. It's like I'm not even sick. And I've got close to, I don't know, over $1,000 of bills just to find out that I was healthy. And, I could have used that in a lot of other different ways, like to buy groceries.
And you're paying your premiums.
Plus I'm paying my premiums. Yeah.
And now in Alberta, where I used to live, there are no healthcare premiums. Right. It's free. It's completely free. Like before, we used to pay $35 a month or something, which isn't the end of the world. In fact, that's probably laughable for most people in the States.
Yeah.
But even so, if you don't have a lot of money, those bills pile up. And now it's free. So that's a good thing.
So that was always going on in the background the whole time that you and I were building Interactive View. right? All those. Actually, we produced the film, released it in 2011, and had no medical issues at all. And then when the film was released, we started having these medical issues and medical bills and things that weren't covered, and things that weren't covered if you were living in a different state than where your insurance was. And we really took the brunt of what we had been talking about.
Well, and a good example is when your husband passed out on an airplane because he was dehydrated, because they take your water, and then you spend $7 on a bottle of water, they take it again. You're not going to go buy another one. And so, I mean, they're causing all these issues in the name of security. I've never felt so insecure in the name of security.
Sort of like that. Yeah, we were actually traveling to the film festival for the healthcare movie when that incident happened, and they took him in an ambulance in Chicago to the hospital and did a bunch of tests in ER to rule out that it was a heart attack, which it wasn't. He fainted. They didn't verify that it was dehydration. That was my analysis, because we hadn't had very much to drink. But he got a bill that was pretty much the full amount that he was required to pay on his what's called a deductible before the insurance would kick in. And so it was $2,500 for him to take a 6-minute ambulance and get treated in ER for fainting. So it took us a long time to pay that off.
Yeah. It just really, in the name of it working better, I don't know that it is. Okay, so that's a big issue, and then you've moved on to other things since then. I say au fond at the bottom of it all. You and I are still psychologists.
Yeah.
So you've worked with a lot of troubled children, mostly.
Uh-huh.
Carrie's been mostly a systemic family therapist, and so together you've done a lot of good for families that have been in distress. And so you made another little movie based on a system.
Right, and I'm not sure if this is the one that's queued up next, because I think
this is going to be Transforming Discipline.
Right. Okay. That was.
So should we watch it first and then you talk about it?
Okay, but if that's the one that's queued up, because there's another one on aquaponics, and I think that's the one that's queued up.
He's got them sequential. So okay, so Transforming Discipline. Let's watch the trailer and then we'll discuss it.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Most of the kids, by the time they get to my classroom, are very good at not doing what they're told. Usually, teachers and administrators respond in a disciplinary action, where they already have a preconceived notion of what consequence is in order for which particular infraction.
In the past, I was very guilty of thinking, there they go again, why are they doing that again? Everything from they're trying to avoid work, or they want attention, or they're trying to drive me crazy, which just didn't make sense.
If this kid could do well, he would do well. Kids do all if they can.
When you see a child who's gone from struggling to being able to solve problems, that's when the shift takes place.
So when you're running, all of a sudden it kind of gets out
It kind of gets out the energy of me being mad.
That's important. I got to write that right down.
2 years ago, we had close to 400 office discipline referrals for the entire year. And last year we had 197. So we had about a 50% reduction in office discipline referrals.
The things that we often do to behaviorally challenging kids don't make any sense anymore once we understand what's really getting in their way. Every behaviorally challenging child has a big old pile of unsolved problems. What a favor it is that we finally at long last figured out all of the problems that have piled up over time.
Okay, so thank you for that. And so you've had a long career working with troubled children. And so can you tell our audience a little bit more about what you experienced and how you came upon doing this trailer and the movie on transforming discipline?
Well, sure. In my work with families, starting a very long time ago, in the 70s probably, I've been working with kids who have behavior issues. And as most people were trained back in the 70s and since then, I was trained in behavior modification, rewards and negative consequences and things like that, because that was just what we did. And I worked in a school for kids who had learning and behavior issues as well for many years in the Seattle area. And we had some of the most difficult kids. They were shipped to the school by bus from 19 different surrounding school districts because they couldn't, the schools couldn't manage them. That's how compromised that they were in their behavior. And so we had these little rooms that, we'd have to put them in if they were out of control, and we'd close the doors, seclusion rooms and quiet rooms and things like that. And one day we brought in a guest speaker from the East Coast to talk to us about this new model called, at the time it was called collaborative problem solving, now called collaborative and proactive solutions, CPS, collaborative and proactive solutions. And they had introduced this model into, the story that they told was into a psychiatric unit for kids with really severe behavior issues. And by training the staff there within, I think it was 6 weeks. It might have been 6 months. I'm not exactly sure the time frame. They were able to completely eliminate all use of restraint, isolation, seclusion, all the things that they did that we were doing at our school with kids because we didn't know what else to do when kids were like out of control. And they completely eliminated it using this model. And I got very interested in that and studied with Dr. Ross Green and became a certified provider in the use of the collaborative and proactive solutions model. And then we went to, Terry and I, my husband and I, went to Maine for a couple of summers in 2013 and 2014, summers, springs, and fall. And we made a film about the use of the collaborative and proactive solutions model in a couple of elementary schools in Maine, where they're not only using the model in the schools, but the reason they're using it in the schools is because it was so effective in the juvenile justice facilities, where they reduced the rate of return of the delinquent youth from something like 90% returning back to 20%. So I'm just telling you all these reasons are why I really like the model. And the other thing I like about it is that it really gets you outside the thinking of rewards and consequences, which was so much that behavioral approach, which is based on the idea that, you just have to motivate kids. If they're not behaving, they must not be motivated. They must, not want to do well. And so you have to make them want to do well. And really, it's not about that at all. So the model is based on the idea that kids who don't do well the reason they're not doing well is because they've got something in the way. They've got some issues with the way they're wired neurologically that they just aren't managing the events of life very well. And so in this model, we first take a look at what are the skills, which if they had them, they would do fine. Things like being able to make transitions, being able to express their thoughts in words, being able to think about another person's perspective. And these are all brain skills that when kids have them, they do well, they behave well, and they do well. So first of all, if they're lacking these skills, rewards and punishments aren't going to teach those skills or make them appear suddenly or make the problems go away. And then the other piece of it is that if you if you have a problem or a skill deficit, for example, with making transitions, and then you go to a school, like let's say junior high, where now you got to go to 7 different classes and you have a transition every 45 minutes and you got to make your way down the hall. If you're a person that has difficulty with transitions, you're going to start acting up in junior high school when those expectations start getting more higher for those skills that you don't have. So we call them lagging skills. And then when you have an expectation placed upon you and you don't have the skills to manage it, we call that an unsolved problem. So, for example, if you dropped me into a town in Greece and said, speak Greek, I don't have the skill. I don't know how to speak Greek. I never learned it. I don't even know, probably not even one word in Greek. And if you expect me to do it, I'm going to flounder because I don't have that skill. And if you say, you know, we'll give you $50 if you can speak Greek, or you better speak Greek or you're just, you know, you're going to miss your dinner, it wouldn't help. So that's kind of the basic idea behind it. We take a look at the expectations that are placed on a kid. We take a look at the skills that the kid has or doesn't have. And then when it doesn't match, that's called an unsolved problem.
But you've talked to me a lot about this, and you know, even in an average person's time, like you know, you got your bills are high, you need to go buy a new pair of shoes, you can't do it. That's an unsolved problem.
Right.
And when we lose it or feel stressed or get to a point where we're not coping as well, that's you, me, and everybody. Mm-hmm. Too many unsolved problems, right? And so that is extremely useful. So what would make you feel better? I mean, how do you, and a lot of things are unresolvable. I mean, there's nothing you can do about those medical bills. And
well, there is, I think the idea is, first of all, to be able to understand that kids with huge behavior problems probably have a huge pile of unsolved problems that start in the morning with having to, you know, leave the house and get on the bus, which is a transition, you know, and then they may have a lack of a sense of time. And so everybody keeps interrupting them just when they're getting started on, you know, getting focused, somebody saying, okay, it's time to change and do something else. And, you know, it happens over and over again. It builds up. So they have a whole stack of unsolved problems. So one of the first orders of business is to identify what are these unsolved problems and try to narrow them down. So, for example, I got these 3 bills I showed you. Well, let's start with one of them and let's take a look at who it's from and how much it is, and, you know, really hone in on what is unsolved about this, and, you know, take a look at, well, what would my options be to pay a bill that's $363? You know, do I take it out of savings? Do I get an extra job? Do I, you know, like, do I ask for a handout on the street? And, you know, I mean, the whole idea of being able to generate multiple different solutions, what I actually ended up doing was I called them up and I said, can I pay you $40 a month? And they said, okay. You know, I can probably manage that. It'll take me a long time, but they're okay with it. And it certainly is better for me. So the idea of being able to generate multiple solutions to a problem is, it's a skill that some people have, that skill of like, okay, well, I could do this, or this. The more you can generate, the more relaxed you're going to be. But if you only have one solution, which is, oh no, I have to pay it and I don't have the money, you're going to be completely through the roof. And especially if you don't have the skill of shifting off of an original idea, which is another skill that some people have and some people don't. You get stuck on that idea and then you get more and more and more stressed. And so the idea of being able to take a look at the pile of unsolved problems and deal with like one at a time and just tease it apart and really be able to have a conversation is actually how the model works, is you have a conversation with the kid about that thing, because most things that are unsolved are predictable. You can predict that if this kid doesn't get along with Johnny, every time he goes out on the playground at recess and Johnny's going to be there, there's likely to be a problem. So you can predict you can predict 99% of the issues. And then the idea is that you would have a discussion, a conversation, not when Johnny's there and you're having this problem, but at a completely different time when Johnny's not anywhere to be found, and you have a conversation. You know, like I noticed that on the playground when Johnny's there, things don't go so well. Tell me about that. You know, and then the kid's like, yeah, he calls me a dweeb or whatever. And so you can really start to narrow things down and walk through the thinking with the kid or the other person about that specific issue. And as you walk through the thinking with them, kind of like a companion, and get information from them about their perspective, and give them information about another person's perspective, and have them think of multiple ideas for how it could be resolved to everyone's satisfaction. And as you do that over and over again, all of these skills begin to get built. And then you have a kid that can function well.
Right. And I think that our stress level makes us less able to deal with various things for the reasons that we've discussed. But when I look at those 35 or so lagging skills, sounds like a lot of people I know, a lot of people complain about their parents or whatever, is that they're fixed in their ways, that they're completely inflexible. You know, I can never figure out why we had to bring, you know, this kind of pie and not that kind of pie, because that's what I said. It has to be this kind of pie. And we can't go to that restaurant because I said we're going to this one. And it's all inflexibility.
Yeah.
And that can be based in fear or not feeling lovable or who knows what. And it all just starts to compound. But what I noticed is that the descriptors of these lagging skills are almost of psychopaths. You know, like they don't have to care if they hurt anybody else. And they don't have to care if they're really, well, it's the same thing. You know, if they're really displacing somebody, it's their way or the highway. But that somehow is rewarded. Like we glamorize, you know, the criminals and the people who have these lacking skills and somehow make it okay. And the rest of us that are a little bit more grounded and conscious have to tolerate these people who don't seem to change or want to change. And so it seems like we're compounding.
Or can't. Yeah.
They can't. But we also show a lot of, you know, unhealthy people on TV, you know, brutalizing and bullying other people around. And the consequences of the kids ending up in the juvenile system, as you said, or not doing well in school are vast. But I think it's even compounded further by the amount of drugs, pharmaceuticals, psychological drugs that are being given to these kids. Because we know that the diagnostic criteria, the DSM-4, you know, is full of labels that if a certain person has this kind of behavior, then give them that drug. And the pharmaceutical companies make a whole bunch of money by drugging the kids, where it's completely unnatural for young children to be sitting in rows and responding to bells and, you know, having no flexibility. They may need to be jumping around.
Yeah.
So what's your comment on the well, two comments: glamorizing unhealthiness, psychological unhealthiness, and secondly, drugging kids.
I'm just making a note so that I can remember glamorizing unhealthiness and drugging kids. Well, interestingly enough, I think that if a kid has all of the skills intact and they watch the glamorized unhealthiness, they watch the violence and they watch the, you know, the lack of remorse and, you know, all of that. I think if the kid themselves has those capabilities, and there's different skills on the list, like being able to appreciate the impact of your behavior on others, being able to think about the perspective of another person, those kind of skills, the social skills, being able to read social cues, things like that. If a kid has those skills intact already in their brain, they can watch those things and come away from it distinguishing themselves from that. They don't model it or copy it. They've got their own inner compass. But there's a lot of kids that are fragile or neurologically compromised, or for whatever reasons don't have those skills intact, and they watch that and they copy it because they don't have the skill of thinking about another person's perspective, thinking about the impact of their behavior on others. And they have difficulty shifting off of, you know, they've seen it, they have to do it. They have difficulty shifting into another gear. So I think I'm always looking at the skill set that the kid brings to the picture. And, you know, hopefully adults can talk to kids about things like that and use it as an opportunity to find out what the kids are thinking, which is one of the other skills, being able to say, yeah, I saw that. You know, I remember a long conversation I had with a 14-year-old boy in my office with his parents present one time. And we were talking about this video game that he wanted called Assassin's Creed. And did he know what the word assassin meant? And he knew what it meant. And we asked him if he thought it was okay to go and kill somebody. And, you know, we just had this conversation with him about his thinking. And what we learned from that was that, you know, no, of course he didn't think that was okay, that it was a game, and that it was, you know, he was able to convince us that he didn't think that way, that was okay to just go around killing people. It was just a game to him. But some kids would take it literally. Now, as far as drugging kids, you know, a lot of times in schools, I think that teachers are overstressed. They've got too many kids in their class. They've got huge expectations to fulfill the No Child Left Behind core curriculum. You know, we got to get through it. We got to get through it. We got to get through it. They don't have, I mean, one teacher was telling me she has literally 1 minute per day per kid, because she has so many kids that she sees in a day, that's literally how much time they can get from her. And it's and so what ends up happening is you get kids who have these skill deficit issues can't manage to sit still and work in groups and listen to the teacher and pay attention all day long and all of that. They don't have a sense of time. And so they are disruptive to what the teacher's trying to accomplish. And it's the teachers that are kind of like, you know, calls the parents in, you got to go see the doctor. You got to get this kid on some medication because I can't manage him or her. And the parents want the kid to do well in school. And so they go to the doctor and the doctor puts the kid on medications. So.
Yeah, but does that help them do better in school? I would doubt it.
Well, in some cases, it helps them be less disruptive, which the teacher appreciates. I don't know what it does for the kid.
Well, and the other thing about SSRIs is that, and antidepressants, is that it's almost impossible to get off them. And whatever the issue was, is waiting. It's still sitting.
That's right. And the kids at the school where I worked at the, you know, around the time that I was talking about when, you know, they had a lot of issues, there were kids who were on what they called a cocktail of sometimes 5 different medications. Plus, you know, something to sleep, something to keep them awake in the daytime and asleep at night, and something to keep them calm so they didn't have tantrums, and something to keep them from being obsessive, and something to keep them from being depressed. You know, and they combined it all together in these cocktails. They had no idea what that was going to do.
Yeah, well, they don't really test the drugs in a way, but they certainly don't test combinations.
Yeah.
And the kids have all kinds of consequences. What's that movie? Making a Killing is a documentary that I've watched that is just outrageous. It's this pharmaceutical, or the psychiatrists that and support groups of parents who have lost a child because the medication killed them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just such a complex thing. And so they're interviewing psychiatrists and they're asking them, well, how young do you think they can start taking these medications? And they'll say, well, you know, when they're teenagers, and then, well, you know, when they're young adults, and, you know, 12, and then you 8 and 4 and 2, and when they're babies. Oh, when the mother's in the womb, we'll give them to the mother so that the kids can come out and have the SSRIs in their system already. But that's just, again, it's a model of a society just gone wrong.
Yeah, totally. Well, and just a lack of understanding of, you know, and of what we're expecting of kids. I mean, really, when you think of a kid who's kind of, you know, back in the days out on the farm playing with sticks and chasing the pigs around, you know, that was a lot more fun for kids.
Running in the grass in their bare feet. The one that gets me is nature deficit
disorder. Yeah.
Where the kids are, you know, turning the key in the door, going in the apartment building, down the elevator, on the concrete, you know, to the school, and never touch the ground.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if a kid has that, take their shoes off, stand them on a lawn somewhere or in a park. No, we're going to drug them.
Yeah.
Well, it's just all backwards. And again, all for the big companies to make money. So, wow, sad. So you're still seeing kids and you still have a private practice dealing with kids who are uncomfortable.
So now I've created what we call a portable lifestyle, which means that I can live anywhere because I see my clients on Skype.
Right. And in the early days when we were both working as psychologists, we didn't have that. And I'm finding that as well. You know, you can do hypnotic regressions on Skype and, you know, leave the person to come back on their own time because they're at home. They can use email for, you know, discussing issues or processing a dream or something like that. And actually there's some, you know, it's still the quality of the therapist. It's not the quality of the location.
Yeah, well, and research has shown that actually that even phone consultation, like distance consultation, is as effective as in person.
Well, and this is the same story as online learning. Like a lot of people think, well, you're sitting at the computer all day, and no, you can have bad online learning and great online learning, bad face-to-face teaching and good. It's the quality with which you put your package together and the consciousness that the therapist has that's going to dictate how well people do. And so, but these tools are really powerful, like looking at trends. My clients will send me an email before their session, and I'm able to say, I'm going to ask you about this, looking at patterns in this, and then they've got time to think about it. And then they can do their journaling or an exercise, drawing a saboteur or something like that on their own time, take pictures of it with their phone, send it to me, and they're processing all week this way with their journaling, and it's very effective. Yeah. And I'm finding that people get through their issues a lot faster, especially dressed in a way where they can, open up. But we've never been taught in school, the psychologist, training as a psychologist, I don't train you to do your own work. And so I think we can only help people to the extent that we are conscious. We can only help students to the extent, that we can facilitate them being creative. Right. So like the 80-20 rule, like the teachers are usually talk. And the students, the other thing is that there's no immediacy of feedback. So they'll write a worksheet and they hand it in, and then they get it back, a week later, and it says they got 64 or 78, and it doesn't mean anything. And they're not in touch with the lesson that, and then the mark is just the level of their self-esteem.
Right, exactly.
There's no learning in there. It's not addressing their needs or the gaps in their learning. The other thing is that we're expecting everybody to be the same, and they're not. But there are patterns that, filter down into the family. I always said, I'm thinking about systemic family therapy now. So if there's pressure on the father from the corporation, and then the father puts pressure on the mother, and the mother puts pressure on the kids, and the kids kick the cat.
Yeah.
That's the hierarchical model instead of the idea of flattening the hierarchies. And that's what happens with discussion boards and students who are a little ahead of another student. They're quite happy to put the teacher hat on. You said you're wearing too many hats, but I think that's what we're doing in Interactive You. We're wearing a whole bunch of different hats, sometimes at the same time. And I always say it's important to know, which hat we're wearing when. But it is a completely different environment when we allow ourselves to flatten hierarchy, right? That there's no elders, there's no, somebody who's really young can be teaching. And that's what we just said before with technology, where the kids are showing the parents how to do things.
Well, when you and I work together on a document in Google Drive or something like that, and we've both got access to the same document, and we're sharing our thoughts and we're typing them all out, or you're talking and I'm typing, or I'm talking and you're typing, and we correct each other's spelling mistakes and do formatting as we go along. And pretty soon we have this beautiful document.
Yes,
and an interaction.
It's the interactivity, and we have done a fine job of that. And it's so pleasurable, because one of the things that we've discussed in terms of writing, because it's all parallel structure and Interactive You, we wrote out those course descriptions. It was largely my ideas and my model, but we did it literally together.
Yeah, and we did every word.
Yeah, every word we did. More than once, because we had to rebuild it twice in Joomla and then build it again. It actually took years to get it working where we didn't get hacked and all that. And we've learned a lot along the way. But we've developed a culture of collaboration just between ourselves. And so, you kind of get writer's block, where not writer's block. Okay, this word or that word. So if you're doing the typing, I'm looking up in a Word document, a synonym, something like that. And then we chase it behind, because that's what you can do in Google Docs. You're both alive, and you can have 5-10 people doing that. And the first time I used it, I was actually sitting across a boardroom table from someone. We were actually in the same room, and we were talking like we talk on Skype to each other in the room, but we were writing the document together in that same space, which I thought that's brilliant. And that's how technology can really work to our advantage. But I think we've both noticed it's a little bit, I want to say, addictive, because it's so comforting that when you go to do it on your own, you're like, what word, Laurie? put them on the website. You got there with you, and then we can't wait to show each other what we've done. So that's what we're doing with Interactive U, is we don't expect anybody to do anything, alone, and school definitely emphasizes that. Like,
totally.
And they'll divide groups and take all the people who got A and put them together, and all the people who got D and put them together. And that's really unnatural. I've always thought it should be family groupings.
Mm-hmm.
So I was teaching in English in Taiwan, and my students had been taking English for like 10 years. But they couldn't order lunch, and they were scared to say what their name was, and they were terrified. So I put them in family groupings, I called them. So it'd be somebody who really wasn't very connected, and they'd go get coffee, right? And then somebody else who was really good with technology, and the people in between. And then they'd get 50% of the mark for what they did in a group, and 50% for their part of speaking for 2 minutes, 1 or 2 minutes. And they all did it. So then they all had different marks. But I just watched the kids who didn't have much see how someone else built the PowerPoint. They didn't build it the first time. And then over time, over long periods of time, because I was there for 4 years working with, large cohort of students, and they just got braver with it. And so, this methodology has been working, and it's fun. I mean, it's much more fun, and we accomplish it together, and you go faster. But how many times when you're writing, you get stuck? And if somebody's, like, pick a word, this word or this word, what's really good, like the person who's writing is stuck, and you say this word or this word, the other person's fresh, that one. Okay, off you go. You don't get stuck.
Yeah.
So that's been really useful. Okay, so portable lifestyle. So now you've gotten into the progression of your of the work that you've been doing has accumulated in seeing, and again, it all sorts of fits together. There's something wrong with the world we live in, where everybody has to have their own house and everybody's separated. So you started a movement, or something called Villaging America.
Oh, you're jumping ahead on that. Yeah, let's do that one next. Well, that one evolved. There's an evolution to that too, but it kind of started back in, after 22 years of living in the Seattle area, and then having our 2 sons grow up and go east to go to college, and then they settled in the east. And we were there with our 2 of us, with 2 cars, 2 offices for seeing people, and we had sold our condos. We were living in an apartment, and the rent was going up and up and up every year, and they were expecting a lease. And then one of the things that happened was one of our cars broke down, and it was irreparable. And rather than replacing it, and it was our better car actually, we just shared this other car. So for an entire year went by with the 2 of us carpooling, thinking we needed each to have a car, and we managed on one car for an entire year. And a year went by, and we were like, wow, it's been a whole year. We thought we would have gotten another car by then. That was kind of the first thing. And then
too many medical bills.
well, and then this whole thing about realizing, because I got this new healthcare plan that had this large deductible, meaning I'd have to pay a lot if something happened to me. And at that time I was 100% healthy, but I had this huge amount that I would have to pay. And it was, November, and our rates for health insurance had hiked up like by about 25 or 30%. And I was thinking, we have now managed to save a little bit of money, but if something happened to me and I had to pay this $10,000 deductible this year, and then January comes, I got to pay it again next year, pretty soon our nest egg is gone. And so that didn't seem right. And we were paying for 2 offices, and our rent was going up on our apartment, and everything was going up. We were making ends meet, but it was kind of like, why? What are we doing this for? And so we said, well, what would we do if we could just take the money we have and do what we want with it, instead of waiting for it to get sort of swept up? And
giving it to the system for utilities, taxes, insurance, and interest.
Sure. Yeah. And everything, and healthcare. And so we thought, what we'd really want to do is make films, and we really wanted to make this film, the one that we just saw the trailer for, Transforming Discipline. We wanted to go to Maine and stay there for an extended period of time so that we could work on making a film about this model. And we didn't want to pay rent in 2 places. What's the point of that if we're going away for, say, 6 months, paying a rent back home? And it didn't make any sense. And so we decided, let's leap off the cliff. And if we need to spend our savings for our monthly living expenses, we've probably got enough to last us 6 months or whatever. And that'll give us time to really figure out what we want to do next. So we sold most of our furniture and put the rest in a big van and drove it down to Oregon, where Terry's sister and mom were living, and put it in a storage locker. And then we went off to Maine, and we stayed with some folks there who were happy to have us stay in their condo in the city because they had a place up in the country that they wanted to spend a lot of time at. They wanted to go back and forth, and they really appreciated having, and we paid a little bit of rent, and they appreciated having that. And so we loved it there so much. And then Terry's mom was failing. She was older, and we wanted to go back to Oregon and be with her. So we went kind of back and forth between Maine and Oregon, and we didn't have a house. We didn't have a quote unquote.
Well, I remember we were on Skype when you turn your computer, and I saw the room full of boxes, and that's everything you pick up as a decision. And you kind of get worn out. Like, there's only so many decisions you can make. Keep it, don't keep it. That's how people end up with storage lockers. And it was pretty distressing. Like, your piano music and,
Yeah.
Like what do you keep and what don't you keep? Anyway, so you were really kind of bogged down with that. And then the next time I talked to you, you were finished. And I said, well, how do you feel? I mean, you could have felt insecure for not having a house or whatever. And the first time I talked to you after you had finished, you were like, both of you, Terry and you, were just smiling ear to ear. We feel great. We don't have the burden of all of that. And guess what? All our friends are jealous.
Yeah. It's really true. And really, it's been 2 years now since we did that. And a couple of things I'll say. One is we haven't delved into the savings that we thought we were going to delve into. We've managed to squeak together by keeping our expenses way down. We've squeaked together just by what we're able to make, video sales, a little bit of counseling here and there. And we just don't have a lot of expenses. And so that's one thing. I was going to say something else, but it'll come back to me. But I guess the other thing is that the less we have, the happier we are. And, so we keep thinning and, we're hauling all this stuff with us everywhere we go. And we're like, woo, we don't need all this stuff. And so it's really very amazing how little we actually think about or need.
Well, and I see that all the time, having been to Egypt 29 times and living over there for 2.5 years. They don't seem to have anything, right? And you go to people's homes, and I didn't realize before that it had to do with the dust, that they didn't have houseplants, they didn't have knickknacks, because the sand would make it all dusty. It took me years to realize that. They got things in plastic bags under beds, right?
Yeah.
But then you go into people's homes, and it's like they don't look like they have anything. They don't have stuff. They don't have books. And they don't even have wardrobes. And so you wonder how they're all managing. But they're happier than happy. And we're all in a state of the next thing we want. And it's not about getting in our culture. It's about wanting. Because we want, and then we get it, and the story's over, and it's the next thing to want.
The next thing.
And then we're insatiable. We're never going to have, it all in the right way. And so that's an addiction. But, and a lot of people have an extra room in their house to put the stuff they don't know what to do with. And then if they downsize and move, they put everything into a storage unit and pay $200 a month or whatever. But if you don't go back to that storage unit for 6 months, 2 months, a year, you don't need any of that.
You don't need that stuff. Exactly.
And if you multiply the months by the $200, you could have bought a new couch or new dishes.
Right. Exactly.
It's just, but that's the trap. And we seem to end up in it. And it's really about not being able to make the decision.
Well, and it's so freeing. Like, just before, we've been in New York now for a month, just over a month. And before we came here, we had one of the 2 cars still that we still had in Oregon. And we just, you have to pay to store things like that. We were paying insurance on it. And what we loved more than anything was living in places where we didn't need to have a car. Like in Portland, Maine, where we lived, we didn't need a car. Everything was walkable. And for groceries, we'd walk to the grocery store and come back in a taxi. It cost us $6. And, imagine you save on car insurance, you save on car payments. $6 is nothing to take a taxi from the grocery store now and then. And so, so just before we left Oregon, we sold our last car. And it was a little kind of like, ooh, are we going to regret this? But we sold it to this nice young woman who was really excited to have it. And we were really happy that she was able to have it for a fairly low price. And now, of course, we don't need a car in New York, and we don't pay car insurance. And that's another expense that's off our back. And we don't have to, it was going to need repairs. You know how cars are. They're going to need new brakes. They're going to need new tires. They're going to need this and that and the other thing. And so now we don't have that to worry about.
Well, let me ask you this. How many cameras has Jay bought since he was 15? And how many cars has he bought?
He has bought 0 cars. He's now 32. He has never owned a car. The number of cameras that he's owned in his company, I don't know, a dozen, 50. Yeah. I don't know. They own a lot of cameras.
Well, that's the point, though.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
They both realized a long time ago that they could do just fine without a car, but you sure can't go far without a camera.
Exactly. Not in their business, that's for sure.
Camera is more important, for sure.
Yeah.
No, so this is modeling of a different way to live, and so now you're at a community with 75 people, and so how's that going?
We love it. It's amazing. It's a very it's a community that's been here for 35 years, and well established, and there's only 4 rules. And so there's not a lot of nitpicking, and there's not, it feels very free. People come and go, and there's meetings and people walk in and out, and, get up and down. And it's a very free experience. Very easy to be authentic.
Easy to be authentic. Isn't that a lovely way to put it? Mm-hmm. So how often do you have to make dinner?
Well, we get dinner made for us 5 nights a week. And on the other 2 nights, we fend for ourselves. And the food is all provided, but we kind of have to forage. The leftovers are put in a place where everybody can go get them. There's lots of leftovers. So we eat leftovers or tuna melts, or, put stuff together. And let's see what else.
In terms of cooking for the group, though?
No, we don't cook for the group. The cooks are, there's a hired cook. And there's certain people who do work trade for their room and board, and so they assist the cook.
So you don't have to cook except when you're fending for yourself, but you must make some kind of work contribution to the community?
We wash the dishes once a week. That's it. And we pay what's called dues, which covers room and board, basically. It covers a room, and it covers all the food that they prepare for us, and all the food that they stock all the refrigerators in with. And they just keep everything stocked. Anything you want. If there's something you want that's not there, you write it on the list, and they bring it next time they go grocery shopping.
Well, it sounds pretty effective. And I know you've been really happy, productive, and busy since you're there.
Very busy. Lots of meetings with lots of people that have very interesting things to talk about.
Right. Okay. So you have been looking at, you've called it Villaging America. Like, what are the parameters? And I've been studying alternative education and alternative ways of living for decades, you and I. But there's characteristic features. Like, a lot of people get involved in co-housing or something like that, which is really about how you structure the house, how you structure the common space, but isn't talking so much about how you get along. Now, being systemic family therapists, that's going to always be the problem-solving part, the way that people get along, how you keep the community alive instead of a million rules. Thou shalt not, speak after 10 o'clock at night is different than, we prefer. It's supportive of other people if we're a little bit quiet, and if you're not, then you're not, which is a completely different thing than the rule. So,
yeah, exactly. If
your whole thing is good, people have to get along. They can't be all, suppressed and pointing fingers at each other and that sort of thing. So you've studied a lot of communities and seen where they're lacking, I think. Is that right?
Well, it's sort of like that. We kind of studied I'm trying to remember how we got onto the whole idea. We were looking for how can you get to a society that's not so much based on profit. all the time? How can you build a society that's where people are first? And one of the things that inspired our more recent thinking was in Salem, Oregon. There was some people talking about buying a 48-acre piece of property in the middle of the city that, like near downtown, that used to belong to the state hospital, and having it become a community land trust. And so we started thinking, gosh, 48 acres in the middle of the city, what could you do with that? And we started thinking about these things that were called urban villages, and we started doing research, and we came upon a website called the Village Design Institute, which really isn't an institute. It's a guy with a website. And this guy has written all these articles about the study that he has done over many decades about what he calls echystics, the study of human settlements. And recent history, not like Egyptian history, like what you've been doing, but more recent history. And so he's come up with looking at villages, mostly like in Europe and the kinds of things that they used to do. He's written articles about what's happened in America. If you look up village, American village, and Google it, well, which I did, you get Indian villages. There's Indian villages in the history of America, but really the word village has not been used. The concept of the village in the United States has not really evolved like it did in Europe. There's towns, but so we started getting really interested in, well, what are the characteristics of a village? And through studying some of the work of Christopher Mayer, who wrote this website about the Village Design Institute, we took some of the things that he said and we developed 6 elements, we call them, of what we call villaging. And so the film that we're going to work on, we've been kind of thinking about for a long time, would be called Villaging America. And we've kind of coined this term, villaging, which if you type it into a Google Doc, the spell check keeps wanting to change it to pillaging because there is no word villaging. We're making that word up and we're turning it into actually a verb. Villaging means that you're actually thinking along the lines of these 6 elements that we've identified. And so then we started to look to see, well, where is there a place where all of these 6 elements exist? So the elements are that there's a geographic perimeter, so you can identify where the village is located. So it's not just like, well, I've got my community, I got these people that live over on the south side and the people live on the north side, and we're friends, so we're a community. It's not like that. We're looking for something that actually has a geographic perimeter. You could actually calculate by some formula, which we don't really know yet, but you could calculate how many people could that piece of land support. How much food you could grow food for them, you could, et cetera, et cetera. So the perimeter and the calculated capacity. That's one. The second one is food. We've got the perimeter established. So is there a commitment of the people who live within the perimeter to create their own food from within the perimeter? And if not, what would it take for them to do so? Go up, vertical gardens, technology, we don't know, but we're looking for people who are wanting to create their own food source within their own community. And then the third one is energy, electricity, and we'll include water in that, heat, cooling, all of that. We're looking for a place that is attempting to create its own energy sources and water sources. And, we've got models like in Germany, there's a little town called, I think it's called I can't remember, Wildsportsten or something. Anyway, I can't remember the name of it, but it, maybe some of the listeners would know the name of this town. They have put solar panels on all of the houses' rooftops, and they've got a little bit of hydro energy, and they produce more than 300% of the energy they need for their town, and they sell it for $5.7 million a year. So this little town of, 2,000, 2,500 people creates way more energy than they need, and they create this huge income for the town out of the extra energy they produce. That's just an example of a town or a village that's working on creating energy for its own needs and even more. Another element that we're looking for is that the village is not designed around automobiles. Most of the cultures, not just in North America, but pretty much everywhere. And certainly if you're going to be building a new development in the United States, the first thing that has to go in is the roads, because we're so car dependent and we're so, we put our grocery store so far away from our homes that you got to drive there. So you got to have a road. So we're looking for places that don't build the community with roads as the center, where the children can play right out in their yard and they're in the trees without having to look out for cars, or, as when I was 5 years old, get a spanking because I sat on the curb in the front of my house. It's dangerous to do that. So we've really aggrandized cars and made them the pinnacle of our society instead of people. And then the another
for profit.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding. So we've got the perimeter, the food, the energy, the cars around the perimeter. If you need a car, go get one from the perimeter and go somewhere you need to go. But if you've got your food and your energy within the community, you don't even need to do that. And also the fifth element has to do with governance, self-governance, and a model that's used to solve problems when they come up. That's a model. And so that Terry and I are very much into that, as we talked about before, that there are models for solving problems that are very effective and evidence-based. And so for a community to adopt a model that's used effectively to solve problems, and a way to govern the people within that perimeter in a way that they all feel that they have the say they want to have. It doesn't have to be necessarily equal. Some people are just as soon, somebody else make a decision of where to put the solar panels, because they're not, it's not their thing. So the governance that really works for the people. And then the sixth element, which is the most important one, and kind of in a sense the most challenging, has to do with the work. The work, not jobs. Jobs are kind of a false, I think, something false that you have to go to pay for all these corporations that are, trying to get money out of you. But if you live in a village, you want to have meaningful work that serves the other people in the village. And initially, if a village is forming in the society we live in, where we have the monetary-based society, we need a village that can create its own income, either through community businesses or worker-owned collective businesses, and so that they can interact with the outside community in a way that supports the village financially. And then ideally, at some point in time, when the village is sufficient unto itself, you won't really need to have the monetary exchange within the village itself, as is evidenced in, there's a community called Twin Oaks. It's been going for 30, 40 years, where the people who live there, they make tofu and hammocks and they sell them on the outside, and they have a work exchange kind of labor point system within the community. They never even see money within the community for months at a time unless they leave. So just the idea that a village could have these elements and really transcend the need to have money be such a big issue, and certainly transcend the need for big corporations.
Well, congratulations on all of that, because again, these are values. This is morals, that people govern themselves out of kindness, not because they're dictated to. You don't have to have a policeman standing there telling you to put your bicycle helmet on. Either you hurt your head or you don't, kind of thing. So we really have a very top-heavy culture that's breaking people down, and it sounds like in every way you're seeking to sidestep it if you can, and create a human wealth, if you will. So, so recently, the next video clip we're going to show, the next and last one, is on an experience you had going and staying in Hawaii for several weeks to see how food production could be made in a different way. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, one of the elements that we're looking at is food production, and we got interested in the idea of aquaponics, which is a form of food production that uses fish, and the water from the fish provides nutrients for plants, and the plants clean the water and send it back to the fish. So it's a recirculating water system which uses about 97% less water than any other farming system, because you only lose water through evaporation. And it produces food that, the kind of the full meal deal. You get the fish, you get the vegetables. And so we got interested in that, and we had this opportunity to go to an internship on the Big Island of Hawaii at an aquaponics farm there that's doing very well. And we learned a lot. And while we were there, we did a lot of filming, and we're making some training videos about aquaponics, about this particular farm. But we also made this sort of a documentary short film, 27 minutes, about the farmer and how he changed his lifestyle to become an aquaponics farmer and what that's meant for him and his family.
Okay, let's look at the trailer.
That's what this is, yeah.
Let's look at the trailer.
I made a decision one day that I wanted to be a farmer. Most people have heard that small farmers can't make a living. It's not true.
Right there. This is the one you guys are going to use.
If you build the system and operate it correctly, you have the environment to grow a lot of plants really well. People think, hey, it's Hawaii, there's one season. In year 5, when I thought I had it all figured out, the weather changed on us a little bit, and every farmer in the neighborhood that grew vegetables was having problems. It wasn't just me. I had built something that was too big to be a hobby and not quite large enough to support the family. I would say that was the biggest challenge at startup, and then we had a personal challenge come in about 2 or 3 years in with one of my sons getting diagnosed with leukemia. That first year that he was sick, I was gone over a third of the year. I wondered lots of times during that time, would this farm make it?
So I'd just like to make a comment on that, because when you first came back from the experience, you went out and got the pieces and then bump and put it together. And then when we were having our interactive U meetings, you're like, look at our little seeds. And then the next they're bigger. And, oh, look, here's a little pepper. And to me, that was just such a great example of modeling, because I mean, I don't know that I would have gone out to do anything with aquaponics or even felt interested. But, you know, to see the growth of your plants, to me, made a lot of sense. And then we had to feel sad because a fish jumped out.
Yeah, we saved one, though.
Get another fish. Whoops. But then the story of how you were making the movie became a personal interest story about a man's journey and what he decided. And then a tragedy that overcame his family. Mm-hmm. And so there's so many layers here. So you're making films, but you're learning more about how to keep it compelling and how to keep it dynamic and all of that. And so when we're finished talking about this, we'll go and look at the websites that you built, because that's also something that we encourage at Interactive U. Not encourage, I mean, we walk people through how to make an e-commerce website. And the idea is that you don't wait for a job. You stand on your own 2 feet and do something that's constructive and creative. And you are a shining example of that. Tell us more about your experience in Hawaii.
So, well, I want to mention something about how aquaponics became a metaphor for us. It was when we built our system, when we came home from the farm in Hawaii. It's a large farm. They do 800 pounds a week of lettuce in their heavy season. And so it's a large farm. And the little system that we made in our backyard was like 2.5 square feet of grow space, where the plants were growing. We grew 11 varieties of plants in 2.5 square feet as an experiment. But, and we used goldfish, whereas the farm used tilapia in Hawaii. We just used, goldfish that we got down at the pet store. And I became very attached to the goldfish. And every day we would go out and, check the system, make sure the water was circulating through and that the fish were happy and that the plants were happy. And what occurred to me was that as a metaphor for my whole view of life, That little system really said it all. Because even though we had some little tiny plants and some big plants, and we had some orange goldfish and some silver goldfish, and even though they're all different, every single one of them needs to thrive, or else there's something wrong with the system. And that's kind of how I feel about the planet and about life. You know, if we're not all thriving, every single human being, every single creature, every single plant on our planet, every single molecule of water, if we're not thriving, there's something wrong with the system. And so that's the tweak. You know, I don't know if I know exactly how to do it, but that's where the change needs to take place. And we can do it at an individual level, we can do it at a community level, we can do it at a global level, but it's the system that's that we need to work on. And it's not like there's something wrong with some people and not others. You know, like if the strawberries aren't thriving and the goldfish aren't thriving, then we need to fix the system. So anyway, there was that metaphor.
So where do you put the fish that jumped out?
Well, that was a problem with the system. You know, we didn't realize that the fish were going to jump out. We thought that the tank they were in was deep enough that they couldn't. Never even occurred to us. And the first one jumped and must have flopped so far that we thought some animal had taken it away, because it was about 8 feet away from the tank. And but then when another one, I found another one lying outside the tank. And by then I had done a little research, and it was just lying still, covered in sand. And I got a bowl, filled it with water from the tank, put the fish in the water, and its gills started to go. And, you know, we kind of kept it harbored overnight in a little bowl until all the dust fell off. And the next day we dumped him back into the fish tank, and he thrived after that. We saved him. So
okay, he's going to stay in his little swimming pool. Good. Yeah, but it's nice to think about things in terms of metaphors and principles and values. We don't usually self-reflect and connect back into, you know, what would make it work better? What would you have to do to feel more free? What would you have to do to feel more satisfied and connected? Well, and that's creativity in my mind. And a lot of people have just stopped being creative, and school just knocks that right out of you, because you're trying to pass tests and figure out what the system wants you to say, and the teacher's the agent of the system that's telling you what to think and instead of how to think. And so all of what you're doing is just a shining example of these principles of letting go of a system that isn't conscious, that is for profit, that hurts people, crushes them on the way. Mm-hmm. And as a psychologist, working as psychologists for as long as we have, you know, we see all the influences of, I call it systemic distress. Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, and that's why I love Interactive U, by the way, because it's not a competition. It's not an everyone for themselves. I better get good grades. I've got to learn this by myself. Everybody's on everybody else's team, and when you're getting some coaching on your project, other people are invited to kind of participate, observe, maybe offer some of their insights, and learn from the process as you learn. And it's anyway, I that's what I love about it.
Okay, so you're a shining example of that. So how about you share your desktop now, and in the last few minutes that we have, and I'll let you just get doing that, and I'll set it up. Okay, so you've been building websites for a long time, and now the technology for building websites has changed. And so we've gone from, you know, using HTML code. I'm going to go in there, and so we'll look at that mosaic after. HTML code, and, you know, using programs like Dreamweaver, and now we've got content management systems and templates that allow for e-commerce websites to happen. And so I'm always talking about correct use of white space, and which directs the eye where to look, and the simplicity, having a color scheme go through so it looks like a family of slides or a family of pages, and so over time, you've built these 4 sites, and I see it as a progression. So Video Plus, there's Transforming Discipline, and there's Terry. Hi, Terry.
Yeah.
And then the 4 of them. Where's the other one?
So there's Educational Videos Plus. So there's, do you want to talk about them one at a time, and then I'll pull up the other ones?
Okay, no, Transforming Discipline, we can go back and forth.
Okay, Transforming Discipline.
That's the one that goes with the, okay.
That's Transforming Discipline, and then I'll just pull in the
last one is
the last one.
Living Aquaponics Movie. So of course you have to go get a domain name for each one. Now, so the last one that you built is very recent, and I just love it because everything to me is it's all a metaphor. It's green because it's lettuce. When you hover over, if you can do that, hover over one of these things, it turns green, which, you know, like everything is, is a metaphor. It's really simple. It's directed exactly to your work. It's an educational video plus. Everything fits together. So maybe move around in here a little bit. There's the trailer that we just saw. Somebody can host a screening, which is what you were doing with the healthcare movie. It's got the e-commerce part.
Not sure what happened to that.
Or if people want to buy the film. It's featuring Zach when you do the, and at The Unthinkable Happened is drawing people into the story. People can contact, okay, you got the about the film on the gray background, and then it goes into the filmmakers. And I think that fish has something to say. That's what this thought bubble, you know, about aquaponics, about the film, about the filmmakers. So it's all there. And then contact, okay, wait, first, okay, host a screening, buy the video, you know, forever licensing, which is an idea you've just come up with. And so each page has different colored or different lettuce because there's so many kinds. And then you can get your forever license. You can do video on demand. It's not there yet, but you can do it. And it's just, and then contact. And there you go. There's Zach. You want to talk to him? There you go. You want to talk to Laurie and Terry? There you go. And so, and then there's all the, at the bottom, the Facebook pages, the banner at the bottom, you know, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and there you go. Sign up and you got the Facebook page. So all of this fits together, but what's happening is that you're thinking it through like, okay, let's go. Thank you very much for that. Now let's go to the Transforming Discipline.
Okay.
So when you first made the Transforming Discipline, you were choosing the colors, and then, okay, you had a package where you knew you needed the film, it's the trailer. Then you needed the film.
Yep.
Then you needed the permissions within that of you know, the release forms for the kids, the release forms for the parents and anybody that you were interviewing. You needed a DVD jacket. You needed a poster.
Right.
And you needed the website. And so in your mind, as I saw you do it, you had the whole picture and you knew you needed all the pieces, and they all, if you put them all down at the same time, they all looked like they fit together.
Yeah.
And you did a beautiful job of that. And so it's not just a website. It's not just a film. It's how are you marketing it? There you've got your Google Plus, your tweets, your likes. And so now when you do something new, it all comes out in the whole family. The whole grouping is there. And that is...
I'll go get a DVD cover to show you. Just 1 second, okay?
Sure. Sure. So, so now Laurie has met a woman who is a singer in French, and she's is under promoted, if you will. And so she, you know, she's there. Like, do you have a video? No. Do you have materials? Yes. So the last time we had a Skype session, Laurie started speaking French to me, because she's learned French to speak to the lady. Okay, so, oh yeah, you're over there with there's the DVD.
Can you see it in the little box, or should I undo the share?
No, I can see it in the little box. I think everybody else can as well. Yeah, so you see how it fits.
It's got a DVD cover that looks just like the website.
Yeah, and is there a DVD in there?
There is.
And so then printed, so you had to also do the label of the DVD that matches.
Yep.
So now you're starting on something new with the French woman, and you're doing something bigger with the villaging, And so,
oh, and then there's another website, which is called
Villaging America.
Villaging America. This is called the Villaging Project, and Villaging America is the documentary.
Okay.
So this is another website that has the elements of villaging, the 6 key elements of villaging.
There you go, because you just told us that.
There they are.
6 characteristics. There you go. Okay, so you're putting your energy in a logical, sequential, multimedia way. You're a living example of what I was hoping to get people oriented to in Interactive U, and you're doing it. And so I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
But that's where we're going. It's like you have ideas, you learn these skills, you recycle the skills, you use them over and over again, and then it becomes quick. So are you becoming more efficient or not at video editing, website thing?
Definitely.
Even photography, because if you go to use your video clips, if you don't have enough establishing shots or nature shots for transitions, then you get stumped. So every time you do a project, you're smarter about it.
Yeah,
and so
totally.
we've just gone through this transition from Final Cut Pro to then Final Cut 10, which is souped up iMovie, to then realizing we have to go back to Adobe Premiere Pro. And so, you know, the methodology is we go and do video tutorials and we learn and we go in there. You got in there first. I was knocking my knees together, terrified. And then I got in there and realized it works, but you went through first. And so, you know, like we take turns doing things first, and we're analyzing what we're doing. We're doing self-reflection, collaboration, and then social action. So those are the 3 interactive processes that go with each course. Programs have 5 courses and mentoring. And so this is the way we work, and you are doing exactly what I had hoped for, and everything's folding upon itself. So I got a big kick. 5 minutes left. I got a big kick out of when you told me you were building your aquaponics website and I was sitting on your shoulder. Because I'm there looking for a word. I'm like, Laurie, you know, so it's interesting because we carry each other, yet we're doing our own thing, but yet we're doing things together. I mean, it all just fits so beautifully. And who could guess that, you know, 30 years ago, who would have guessed that we would end up here on an Interactive U TV show?
I wouldn't have guessed that.
No, or that your sons would be thriving filmmakers in New York.
I would never have guessed that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Did you want to do the brain thing, or do we have time?
No, we do. We have a few minutes just to show that. And so...
let me share my screen again. Yeah. This, there's actually...
Go ahead.
Okay, is it sharing?
Yes.
So
what we realized somewhere in there was that is that we had a set of skills that were developing for Interactive U, like starting with using technology. So you see the list there of the points, and these came from me having a conversation in one of these sessions where we were a work session, and Laurie just opened a spreadsheet and started typing in what I was saying, and then she put everybody's name in, and we started to rate ourselves in terms of our abilities. So 0, not started, beginning 1, emerging 2, mastering 3, right? And then I'm trying to scroll down, but it's your screen. It's your sheet.
Okay.
Usually we both have access to it. I see that it's Google Drive and I'm trying to work with it. And so then I took all of that and then I put it into the brain, which is a multimedia. So I always want to use multimedia and also to connect with the various points. And so we can go and add to it and put a link under each one to explain what we're talking about. So I'll just let you speak for a minute.
Well, the brain is an interesting way of organizing things because you can add links and all kinds of things. So there's more to be done with this. But you can see that the interactive mosaic of skills is using technology, writing, research, personal development, creating presentations, and collaboration. And those all have, let's see if I can close that up. They all have...
just click on another one and it'll open up.
It'll open the other one, see? And so that we just closed up using technology, and we've got all these aspects of collaboration. And And so like using a Kanban to organize workflow, for example, we can put a link in here to kanbanflow.com, which is a free program that allows you to plan together and organize the things that you're working on when you're collaborating with other people, implementing strategies for problem solving. So we rank ourselves on all of these different areas. There's lots of things about writing, for example, and research. So the brain is kind of an interesting adjunct that you can use together. You can look at other people's brains, or you can create one together and put links and follow it around. And it can be kind of almost like a training program. You know, like if you were going to do your assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems, there's a link that we can take you to, and that'll give you that list of skills we were talking about earlier, that if you have them, you do well. And if you don't have them, you don't do so well.
Right. And it's a good place that you can just troubleshoot. So,
and it's a work in progress. There we go. Now you can see there's 6 basic categories.
Right.
And it's kind of interactive and fun because you can click on them and do some exploring. So,
and I would like to see it be a little, I always want it to be more multimedia, more colorful, to put icons and that sort of thing. But this came from me realizing, and you asking lots of questions about what we really expected of people, not expect, but that we're using a lot of techniques, and everybody comes in. Let's go back to the spreadsheet. Everybody comes in with different gaps in their learning. And so if you scroll down, you know, and I'm still learning things too. And because I created the system and I've been working this way for 15 years, I've been doing this for a long time. So you see that if you change a score, and I just now took a big step with the brain so I can change my score on that. So my score is 137. And so, but there's certain sections where, you know, Laurie hasn't been publishing so much. And so, but that doesn't mean you have to. This is just an assessment. But it's surprising because the students that are coming in that are rock stars, we took everybody else's score out just to show you this. But the kids that are coming in that are rock stars, and they have skills. They're moving ahead fastest because they already they already know these skills. So we're just coming to the end of our time here. And I'd just like to thank you, Laurie, for your consistency, for your brilliance, for your tenacity, for your willingness to step outside the box, your punctuality, availability, and modeling. So you're a treasure. So,
well, thank you. Where did you get that list?
It's coming from the deepest part of myself.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity to be on this Conscious
Consumer Network TV.
Say it again.
Yeah, Conscious
Consumer Network TV. Yes.
That goes 24/7. You can watch it off the Pyramid Code Facebook page or interactive-the-letter-U. And I'd just like to say that next week we're going to have Bruce Cunningham, and we're going to be talking about a trip to Java, to Borobudur, and this new site with a 28,000-year-old new pyramid that they found. It's the first time we're going to be leading a tour there. I'm a guest host on it, and the archaeologists are going to join us, and they're going to come on screen with us. So next week, same time, we'll be doing episode 6 of Interactive U TV. I'm Dr. Carmen Boulter. Thanks so much for watching.
Yeah.
If you really had to make a difference on a large scale with minimal resources, how would you go about it? Have you ever dared to dream of doing that which seems impossible? On a planet steeped with corruption and destruction, the question beckons, how do we change it? Media has a far-reaching impact on people and has been used to manipulate humanity into our current destructive patterns. In order to affect people into moving into constructive patterns of behavior, we need to construct a new paradigm of media. Consumer Network has been created with the explicit intention of giving the amazing truth-seeking, solutions-orientated, alternative media a place to fully realize their true potential with a cutting-edge, high-tech professional media platform. In turn, some of the greatest freedom-seeking hearts and souls of our time have realized the true potential of what has been created and have come together to provide their insight and inspiration on CCN. Conscious Consumer Network has become a unique, interactive information and educational network which provides a free-to-view, live-stream, ultra-high-definition channel to the world and features 25 live shows a week and growing with the addition of multiple language broadcasts. CCN has features comparable with mainstream media, such as being able to pause and rewind broadcasts whilst being live-streamed. Catch up on this or previous broadcasts, now available from CCN high-definition downloads. You can now purchase a high-definition download of your favorite CCN show from ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a monthly pledger. This can be done with a monthly pledge of €10, which will allow you unlimited access to CCN's high-definition downloads, which hosts a back catalogue of over 250 shows, which have been aired since the launch of CCN on the 1st of January 2015. In order to keep CCN on the air, public funding is needed. Please donate to CCN's Network Support Fund or become a monthly pledger. Help keep alternative media in the hands of the people. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.